My name is Gioia and I'm a second year English language and media student at the University of Brighton. In this presentation, I'll be talking about what it was like to be working in an online environment in the midst of a pandemic. I'll also be introducing my work placement, and I'll be talking to you about my experience as a junior events assistant, and I'll be critically reflecting on that experience as well. I hope you enjoy. Action Medical Research is a leading UK charity which funds vital and important research to help defeat the diseases that devastate the lives of young people, children and disabled babies. Since the charity was founded nearly 70 years ago, Action Medical Research has funded over 60 top quality projects across the UK. These projects include training fellowships at leading specialist centres, hospitals and universities. Currently, Action Medical Research is funding research into COVID-19 and how that might relate to children, epilepsy, prematurity, and other rare and distressing conditions. In this section of the presentation, I'm going to be talking about the events that Action Medical Research hosts. In addition to trusts and other forms of charitable donations, the funds required by Action Medical Research are largely collected by the events it hosts. Action offers some amazing events, which would suit the sporting ability, location and ambitions of a wide audience. Some of these events include running, team challenges, trekking and even canoeing. However, it's probably the cycling events that draw in the largest audience. Events and my work experience. As the title of my position might indicate, my time at Action would largely be spent working alongside the events team. During my time at Action, some of the key responsibilities I would have would be contacting vendors, creating event support materials, and frequently updating social media and website channels. And it was really those responsibilities that were outlined in the advert for the position that initially attracted me to the idea of working for Action Medical Research. And this was largely because in my past history of employment, I've often had to do similar roles, and so therefore I felt confident I was able to support the charity in these ways. Aside from sharing some of the key responsibilities in my past employment, the idea of working in events really appealed to me on its own. Both my parents work in the film and the theatre industry, and so I grew up in a very artistic household. And so the idea of predominantly working with people and creatively expressing myself in that way really excited me. And a final and a slightly more personal reason as to why I decided to apply for the position with the charity was because of its focus on children. Whilst nothing was life-threatening, I was born with a few birth defects, and that meant I had to have a few operations before the age of 1. And hearing the stories of my parents and carrying the scars meant that the charity's mission was a very personal one to me, and I knew that I wanted to help the children and support the families that the charity helped in any way I could. Before I provide you with 3 examples of my work that I completed for the charity during my time at Action Medical Research, I want to dedicate this portion of the presentation to a reflective model. I'll be using this model as a guide to not only reflect on the work, but also my experience as a whole at my work placement. Bode's triangular representation illuminates the core notion that reflection leads to further learning. Applying Bode's model, I will now talk about each of the work tasks I completed for Action Medical Research. I will reflect on these events and then discuss what I have learned, what I might change, and what I might do the same in the future. My first day at Action Medical Research started with a 9 a.m. meeting with Felicity Luden, who is the head of events. It was during this meeting that I found out I'd be working with a fellow second year student, and that we'd both be working for and creating materials for the cycling events hosted by Action Medical Research. Finding out that I was going to be in the cycling department, I was a little bit nervous because I don't know a lot about the subject matter. These nerves only increased when I found out that my first task was to go through the website and click on all the cycling pages and to make sure that all the information and the spelling and the grammar was correct. I initially decided to hide the fact that I felt out of my depth and attempted to edit the website anyway. However, this method soon proved to be faulty, when I received a message from one of my co-workers asking for an update, and I realised I had very little to show for it. I decided to communicate to her that I was really struggling, and we decided to come up with the idea that I would focus on the graphics, whilst the other second year student would be focusing on the linguistic aspect of the website. With my focus now on the graphics on the website, I was a lot more in my element and found that I was able to quickly highlight and suggest areas that could use an update or improvement. I noticed straight away was in relation to the graphics that indicated the mileage for the bicycle routes on the website. A lot of the numbers were cut off or misshapen, and it just made the website look a little unprofessional. I also noticed that a lot of the pictures seemed quite blurry or out of date, and I decided to make a note of this as well. I decided to create a spreadsheet with my finding to present to my superiors. I thought it would make most sense if I had a column which would have all of the URLs of which I had checked next to another column which would indicate whether or not it had been checked. And finally, there would be a column which had all my comments and suggestions for which to improve the site. I was nervous about handing in the spreadsheet because I wasn't sure how the team would take my suggestions or my critiques of certain graphics. However, I found the team was super welcoming of all the suggestions and grateful that I had noticed them, and changes were soon made to the website. Using Bode's triangular model, I've been able to critically reflect on my first task at Action Medical Research. I think a huge misconception prior to working here was that criticism was a bad thing. Instead, I now see it as a helping hand if given in a useful and a kind way. In the future, I'll be viewing criticism as a constructive tool and remind myself that I should also be receiving it in such a way. Because I had expressed my interest in social media and graphics, the head of eventing thought it might be an idea that I create social media posts for an upcoming race. I would be creating promotional material for social media platforms for Raptor, Action Medical Research's annual insurance bike ride, targeted towards those in the insurance industry who also had an interest and passion for cycling. I really wanted to succeed in promoting this event to a higher standard. Because of this, I tried to make sure that all my canvas looked very different from each other, with the belief that it would speak to as many people possible within the insurance industry. As you can tell from the presentation, there are some canvas that are definitely more masculine and others that have more of a feminine touch. And by the time I was finished, I felt really confident by what I had achieved. Whilst I felt very confident about my canvas and very proud of what I achieved, it became clear after I submitted them to my boss that I had missed the mark. Felicity was looking for drafts for future Instagram posts that would go along with the theme of Action Medical Research's Instagram site. And whilst my Instagram posts promoted the event in an efficient way and looked aesthetically pleasing, they were too different from what they had previously posted, and thus she felt like they could not be used. Using Lord's model as a reflectional model again, I'd like to reiterate the following point that he's made. According to the scholar, learning from reflection takes place when people recapture their experience, think about it, mull it over, and evaluate it. The scholar continues by saying that for them, the evaluation process consists of re-examining experience in the light of one's intent and existing knowledge, and then integrating this new knowledge into a conceptual framework. Upon reflection, I believe this statement is especially applicable in relation to my communication within a working environment. Whilst I believe I have a very strong and good communication in my social life, in my working environment, I lack confidence and thus am more prone to making mistakes. I think where I could have really improved for this task is if I had communicated facts better via email and listened before I spoke. Especially, I believe I could have simplified my messages so that the communication would have been clear and concise. Task 3, Social Media Planner. Citing Board for the final time, the scholar says that the essence of reflective learning is not just the process whereupon one reflects and one says, we'll do it again. But more importantly, it is to change what you do because your understanding of how the world works has been changed as a result of the thinking in a structured way about the experience you've had. I feel like this is especially demonstrated in relation to my new conceptualized understanding of communication and how I've communicated from the last task to this task. Felicity had asked me to create a social media planner for the Raptor race. The way my communication differed in approach to this task was that I constantly emailed her, and we had frequent face-to-face meetings via Teams to make sure that I was on the right track. Also, I created a draft version, as you can see here, and I uploaded it on Teams so she had constant access to it and could edit it. Her editing can also be visible via the presentation through the writing in red, on which she has highlighted that the photo has been taken from the website and that I should indicate this when posting. I'd like to dedicate this final part of my presentation to skills aside from communication that I've either gained or developed through my time at Action Medical Research. I believe I've demonstrated a high work ethic through being consistent with my work despite working in a global pandemic. I believe I've gained some computer skills through working in an online environment. I've worked on my problem solving through acknowledging my mistakes and suggesting solutions. I've been self-motivated, and I've worked on my time management. Thank you so much for being a part of my presentation. I hope you enjoyed.